Well, welcome to Shop Talk Express, Dafna.
Thank you very much, Dan. I'm very glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Our pleasure. Now, one of the big lessons, thinking back to the experience of the last few years, Dafna, one of the big lessons of the COVID pandemic was the need for agility, wasn't it? Adapting quickly to changing market conditions. What kind of data and insights are available today to help the industry do this?
So there is no question that agility is very important, and it's important not only during crisis. When we have a crisis, it really pushes us to make some decisions quickly. So on the whole, data can really be very powerful in driving those decisions. But before I really talk about the kind of data, I wanted to make a point that having data is great, but what we do with it matters really the most.
Very, very good. Now, just thinking about some of the learnings from the work that you've been doing, Dafna, what are some recent insights into C-store shopper behavior, coming after a period of great instability and crisis?
Yes. So we've had remarkable 2 years, and the consumers had to change lots of behaviors as a result. But I think some of the changes that they've made, and we'll talk about what they are, particularly in C-stores, are changes that they are adapting and adopting for the longer haul. So I won't say long haul, but longer haul. Yeah. What is it? Is that during this time, we've had the time to reflect a little bit on our lives, and what we like, we keep. So the consumers are a little bit more planful, if that's a word, in terms of their shopping trips. So we're seeing fewer trips in the marketplace, but we're also seeing some more significant basket spends. So we're going to the store less frequently, but we're buying more, even in convenience, which typically used to have relatively smaller baskets when you compare that to other channels. And that, what we used to call new normal at the emergence of the late 2020 and into 2021 is our normal. Fewer trips, larger baskets. Now, that means that there are also more items, and as a result, we were able to sustain growth in the business, which is great. However, more recently, we can't avoid talking about really some of the pressures that we have. Price inflation, even before what is happening currently, the unfortunate events of what's happening today in Ukraine. Inflation, both out of the store as well as in the store. Supply chain problems, right? So that has also resulted in some behavior changes that perhaps are not as appealing. So loyalty took a hit, because if I'm as a consumer going to the store and can't find my product, I'm either going to switch to another product, another brand, or we're going to potentially even switch stores. So both retailers and consumer packaged goods companies suffered from loyalty. And I think that is once a product or a store or location gets into your acceptable set, if you will, as a consumer, then it's hard. It's there. It's you need to change it back to regain that loyalty. When it comes to inflation, we have seen two things, both at the pump and in store. And this is before most recent events, and I'll talk about that a little separately, is that with the pressures, the longer they last, the consumers have to manage their wallet a little bit more carefully, right? Yeah. So at the pump, we're seeing more trips and smaller fill-ups, okay? So the consumers are eager to resume their lives. We can see that in traffic, we can see that in reports, but on the whole, we're seeing them feeling there are more trips, and those fill-ups, that's how they manage their wallet, $10, the $20 fill-up, the $30 fill-up these days. In the store, we have been seeing that the baskets are still larger than they used to be, but we're starting to see fewer items in the basket. So there are higher prices, so the spending is still kind of maintained, but those fewer items in the basket is indicating to me that the pressures are being felt and the customers and the consumers are managing what it is that they buy. Now, we can't ignore what has happened since late February.
So this is really, really recent stuff, Dafna, just in research, isn't it?
Yes, very recent. Just as recent as a couple of days ago. Fuel prices have skyrocketed. We're talking unprecedented increases, 60, 70 cents over a course of a week or 10 days or so. Nearly $4.20 on average here in the US, but there are huge gaps across the states, a huge continent. So that's one thing, and it's like a hockey stick. It really escalated considerably so. And the pressures in the stores are not ceasing. So in other words, when the consumers are coming into the store, they're still feeling inflation there. It's not similar in magnitude to what we're seeing in fuel. So what do we see? We see even more trips. In fact, interestingly enough, a bit ahead of the bad news. So more trips ahead of the imminent invasion into Ukraine, and then more trips as we were talking here in the US.
That's really interesting. So almost like in anticipation of what was going to happen.
Exactly. But now instead of spending $40 on or $30 on a tank of gas, it's $60, it's $70, it's significantly more. And it's not really projected to cease this year very much. So a lot of us would think that this would have a negative impact on what's happening in store. And this is very early data. So in the early, really ultimately in these early stages, I do not see any really meaningful impact on trips into the store. But I am seeing acceleration of what's coming in the decline in what's coming into the basket. So what that means is that budget management is holistic. We can't ignore it. And ultimately, if this lasts, the longer it lasts, the more the pressure will be felt, the more actions the consumers are going to make. And we're seeing those early signs. I think, though, that these more trips to the pump can provide an opportunity for the C-store industry because the customers are already on premise. So there is an opportunity to bring them into the store, to convert them into a store. So it's perhaps not all bad, but it is likely what that basket in the store is going to be smaller.
Fascinating. Well, it's great to have data which shows us what's happening over the last couple of weeks, because obviously it's pretty dramatic. Interesting to see the impact it's having on consumer behavior. Just finally, Dafna, very briefly, what do retailers and CPG need to do as we move into the year to come?
I think there are maybe three things, or maybe four, that I would touch upon. I think the first thing is it's critical we deliver value as an industry. And when we have inflation, it's hard to deliver value without eroding your margin, whether you're a consumer packaged good company or a retailer. So I think there is a lot of opportunity to think about the reason the customers are coming into the store, the missions that they're coming, bundling products, where you address a solution and need, as opposed to just you can buy this beverage for $2 for $4 or however. So delivering value in creative ways through products and bundling. Promotions and offers are table stakes. So I would say don't stop that. The second point is the point that I made initially about loyalty. Like, it took a hit, and this is really no time to not try to continue to build it. So if as a company you didn't run as many promotions, you stopped communicating with customers, this is really the time to rebuild. And knowing your customer becomes even more critical. So as they adapt, and that agility that we talked about, it really allows you to be there. The third thing that I would say is convenience, redefining convenience. We are a convenience channel. We ought to be delivering on convenience, and the pandemic forced a lot of the retailers in particular to leverage technology to deliver on convenience that was rooted in pandemic. But now this is convenience for the sake of convenience. So if there is pay at the pump, self-checkout, order online, these are all frictionless activities that served a need during the pandemic that I think can and should continue to be emphasized in the retail environment.
Very, very, very good.
And lastly, if I'm closing the loop, well, one thing around short-term versus long-term investments. Don't stop now to think ahead and invest. So if I were to pick on sustainability, for example, it means a lot of different things for different consumers. Define what it is for you and definitely continue on that path, because that's not going away. And on the data front, lever it. It's at our fingertips. It really allows us to understand the consumer better and continue to extract as much value from it. So know your consumer, understand your shopper, like we do with our clients as well. So if you think about it, if anyone who's listening would like to really understand more about the shopper, they're welcome to visit our resource center there and the PDIsoftware.com and see some more from what I talked about.
Well, very interesting, Dafna. And I must say, I'm fascinated for one, really, just to hear some of the latest news on where the consumer is, because things are moving so quickly. It's very hard to keep it, to keep pace with where consumer behavior is, isn't it? And obviously retailers need to adapt very quickly to these very big changes.
No question. No question. So it's that agility that we talked about in the beginning isn't going to stop. We hope we have fewer crises for sure. I always say that a lot of questions are being asked when things are tough. I think that when the things are not so tough, it's actually the best time to be agile and to lever data and understand your consumer, because you don't have the market pressures that you have to adjust to, but it really can propel our industry forward. And I think we're in a unique position on that front.
Very good. Well, look, very interesting to spend some time and talk to you, Dafna. Thanks for joining us on Shop Talk Express.
Thank you very much. It was a pleasure.